Mr. Nader, I understand that you're here and you've got these four different political candidates arguing and debating, but really I think a lot of people showed up here tonight to hear your thoughts and opinions. And there are some important issues that are happening around the world right now, so I'd like to ask you a few questions. Given that we're not likely to reduce greenhouse gases in the near future, do you believe that the government should continue to commit federal dollars to rebuild in areas where engineers and scientists agree that these areas are threatened by the impacts of global warming?
No, of course not. And the flood insurance plan that the government has encourages building in areas on the coast that can be quite easily flooded. And so there's a perverse incentive where people will build in these perilous areas because they can get federal flood insurance. I think the post-Sandy thinking process is going to start cracking down on that.
Yeah, right now we hear we will rebuild, we'll come back the same as ever before. What are your thoughts on those types of comments?
Well, some of the beaches have just gone away. I mean, there's so much damage that it's just not a matter of rebuilding a house after a fire occurred on a hill. So they're going to have to reevaluate the whole littoral struck by Sandy, not just in terms of global warming perils and higher water levels in the ocean, but just in terms of a very bad investment and a peril to human life.
And so now, using the Israeli and Palestinian conflict as an example, what would you expect from the U.S. government with respect to dealing with refugees displaced by climate change?
Well, there's been very little planning on that. There are already hundreds of thousands of people in the world, and not just the islands in the Pacific, that are being displaced. This is going to be a very serious problem. If the sea level goes up 4 or 5 feet, you're going to have huge areas like in Bangladesh inundated permanently.
Do you anticipate the United States opening up its borders and perhaps creating opportunities for settlements of these displaced refugees by climate change here in the United States?
There's nothing in the political arena suggests there's a chance that they're even thinking about it now. It would be much better if we led the world in a faster transformation to dramatic energy efficiencies, which quickly cut greenhouse gases, and a transformation into solar energy in all its manifestations, replacing fossil fuels. The technology is ready. Wind power is exceeding nuclear power all over the world in terms of electric generating capacity. It's just that the United States is not leading, it's lagging because of a two-party structure that stifles rational political behavior supported by a majority of the American people.
Do you also believe that perhaps since energy is something that people make so much money on, and when you have something like wind energy or hydropower, at some point it becomes free, it pays for itself. Is that a deterrent, do you believe?
I didn't understand what you meant.
So at some point, wind energy or hydro energy is not necessarily a commodity that you can own or own. Of course, the equipment is. Do you believe that that's one of the reasons that businesses are less likely to move in the direction of sustainable energy?
Oh, yes. Historically, in our country, it's much more lucrative to own the source of energy, like a coal mine or an oil well or a gas well. And that's why they developed such political power in Washington against solar energy, because Exxon doesn't own the sun. It's a common property, and the only investment basically is into intermediate technology for your home or your building to bring it to a focus.
And now, many feel that in spite of the effort made by yourself and the candidates today, the two-party system is likely to continue. Do you think it makes sense for people who are most concerned to sit back and let the system implode, in essence, let Rome fall, as the only solution to address the corrupt situation and then really unite people?
They don't need any assistance. The system is crumbling of its own decadent weight. Greed is paramount, power is concentrated behind greed, and that's a prescription for the decline and destruction of a civilization throughout history. We are now an American empire abroad, draining our country of trillions of dollars and increasing more and more enmity by people around the world. And we have severely neglected investing in our own resources. Poverty's increasing, livelihoods are declining, and the rich are getting richer. I remember something about the final days of the Roman Empire. We are doomed to replicate the decline that affected empires all over the world, because the ultimate definition of an advanced empire is that it devours itself.
And lastly, Mr. Nader, it is such an honor for us to have the opportunity to be here today. You know, finding a media source and actually representing independent media is a very difficult thing to do. Where do you get your media, and how do you feel citizens should seek or find resources so that they might become more informed, not just about what MSN has to say or Fox News, but where's the place to look for the news?
They're all on the internet, most of them. But progressive publications like the collection of progressive columnists in a newspaper called The Progressive Populist. You got Nation Magazine, Washington Monthly, Indies Times, Progressive Magazine, The Guardian. There are a lot of cable networks now that have very incisive investigative reports. So it's very easy now. There's no excuse now.
There's no excuse, and it's not all about money. Social media plays a big part in that. Do you participate in social media?
Yes, we have a Twitter account and Facebook recently, but social media is good to tell people what's going on, events, and it's good to get information, but it hasn't proved that it can motivate people in reality to show up at marches and rallies and courtrooms and town meetings. There's a huge withdrawal of tens of millions of Americans who've given up on themselves, who've lost confidence in their own civic power, which of course is the easiest way to concentrate power in the hands of the few against the many.
So it's interesting. It's in some ways it's almost like you give up on the people who are actually in charge today. Do you have any thoughts or feelings about environmental literacy or hands-on learning, sustainability in our school systems, allowing students to be raised right?
Well, that is spreading. There's no doubt there are more youngsters today aware of the environment than 40 or 50 years ago. The question is whether they, when they graduate, will have civic roles and opportunities to put that knowledge to work against the greed hounds and the concentrators of power and the polluters. So knowledge is important, but it's never enough. I have a little saying: cognition does not ignite ignition. You can know here, but if you don't have fire in your belly, you're not going to break your routine and join with your fellow citizens to take over under we the people, which is what the Constitution started out.
Thank you so much. This is Miriam Gennari reporting from Busboys and Poets here in Washington, D.C. with Mr. Ralph Nader. Thank you again for a wonderful night.
Okay, Miriam.